Well, Washington is in damage control this morning after 250,000 classified files were leaked to the media. The whistleblowing website WikiLeaks released confidential cables that reveal what American diplomats really think. In some files, Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad is referred to as Hitler. There are private messages from Arab leaders begging the U.S. to attack Iran, as well as claims the Russian government has ties to organized crime. The White House calls the leak reckless, saying it puts the lives of Americans at risk. And joining us right now is Michel Katsuya, a security expert and former CSIS officer. He's with us live in Ottawa with reactions. So the White House, Washington, has always been against the leak of these memos. Is it in the public's interest, you think?
Well, probably not, because it defeats any form of responsible and professional journalism. In the form of anybody would like to put their hand on another Watergate or something like this, because that is definitely the people in public, in politics, that are ready to sort of go through the judgment of the lens of the general public. But here what we're having is raw information that has been passed between diplomatic missions. It is normal to write your impression. It is normal to write exactly what's going on. Now, unavoidably, diplomats go around and try to sort of develop sources. And definitely in their line of work, it's sort of borderline spy work to a certain extent, but it always been like this. It's always been and always be like this. Diplomats are right there to try to bring information as much as possible to prevent to go to war. But in that perspective, we're talking about our sources, we're talking about who we've been talking to, we're talking about impression that was received, and that can be really, really damaging and definitely risk-taking, life-taking for some individual who happen to speak with American diplomats.
Michel, any mention of Canada?
Definitely. Canada, we're expecting over 2,000 documents will be revealed, according to Wikipedia. Already some information have been coming out where the Obama administration requested, and it's more the CIA than the Obama administration, the CIA requested that diplomats find credit card numbers, the frequent flyer plan numbers of Canadian diplomats, so they can watch where they go, how they go, and what they buy online, or which restaurant they're going, so they can spy a little bit more. Definitely information about the way they really perceive the Canadian government and some of our elected officials will come out. Would it be causing a diplomatic rift between Canada and the U.S.? I don't think so. It's a little bit like an embarrassing secret that just came out, but we're two good friends. We'll sort of go on. It probably is good for Canada, because now the U.S. will be trying to courtship us for a little moment to try to sort of rectify the situation. And it's definitely a wake-up call, again, from for the diplomats and the entrepreneur working in the U.S. That we are not working necessarily with the best friend. Since the end of the Cold War, we moved from a military confrontation to an economic confrontation, and now it's everybody for themselves. And every country that has an offensive capability, the Brits, the French, the American, the Russian, the Chinese, will use their diplomats and will use their offensive capability to try to sort of spy on us. So Canada has to wake up. The Canadian government has to use this as a wake-up call to remind everybody that we're playing with guys with big shoulders, and they play different rules and a different game.
Yeah, the document's certainly highlighting some of those international schisms. Michel Katsuya, live in Ottawa this morning. Appreciate your time.
Toujours a pleasure. Thank you.
To discuss the potential fallout, we're joined by security expert Alan Bell. Good morning to you, Alan. First of all, some are describing this as the biggest intelligence leak in history. Would you agree?
Oh, definitely. There's been over 250,000 of leaked United States Embassy cables, and this is the largest set of confidential documents ever to be released into the public domain, and more importantly, it'll give people a view into the unprecedented insight into the U.S. government's foreign activities.
How did WikiLeaks gain access to these classified documents?
Well, they're still looking into that at the moment. They think it could be the same U.S. soldier that provided the Iraqi papers and the Afghan papers, but they're not sure at this particular moment in time. Even so, that individual is in jail at the moment awaiting trial for the initial releases.
WikiLeaks is expected to release Canadian references later this week. How concerned should government officials be?
Well, I don't think this is a national security issue. I think what it is, it's going to be a sort of an embarrassment by diplomats, as we know, publicly say one thing and what is expedient, and now they've basically been found out what they really think. And I think this, as opposed to damaging national security, could probably have a serious impact on relationships with individuals between the countries and also the alliances that are suddenly in place.
What could the fallout from the release of these documents be, both in Canada and globally?
Well, in terms of Canada, we will find this out later on this week, as you've already said. I think the big issue is if our government has been found out to be not telling the truth, that could have a major impact on the government. I have no doubt that the other political parties will take this to the bank. The other problem is the U.S. now are being seen to be doing one thing, and now and privately they're saying other things. And I think this has a bigger impact on the U.S. government as opposed to it on the Canadian government.
Could this change how government officials communicate with one another?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, as I said, there's over 15,000 of these released documents, secret documents, which are, all our documentation is classified from certain areas, and with over 15,000 secret documents leaking into the public domain, this, as I said before, is unprecedented.
Alan, is this finally more of a security breach or just a fact of embarrassing governments?
It's a combination of both. One of the problems is, everyone doesn't get on with everybody in every country, and as I said, this diplomatic face that's put on in most of the meetings globally, they're now finding out, everyone's going to find out what's been said about them. There's supposed to be some very unusual remarks made about some world leaders, which is not going to help in the future. Policies, if one country is saying this particular thing and really they're saying something else in private, now this gets out, so there's going to be a lot of change. Let's say that in the next 2 weeks the fallout is just going to be tremendous, and damage control is not the word for this at the moment. They're in panic control, not damage control.
All right, Alan Bell, as always, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Behind the handshakes and the smiles with world leaders, 250,000 confidential cables reveal what American diplomats really think. From backroom bargaining to empty out Guantanamo Bay.
Let's make a deal!
Just like the game show, U.S. diplomats urged countries like Slovenia to make a deal, take back a prisoner, and win a diplomatic date to meet President Obama. And while Iran is seen as a real threat, now armed with North Korean missiles, its pursuit of a nuclear bomb had Saudi Arabia's King Abdullah begging Washington to attack, to cut off the head of the snake. One Arab leader called President Ahmadinejad Hitler, warning America the threat from al-Qaeda would be minor if Iran has nukes.
You're going to see the unvarnished truth. You're going to see the actual opinion that our ambassadors, our senior officials have overseas.
Oh, and it's embarrassing. French President Nicolas Sarkozy described as the emperor with no clothes. Russian President Vladimir Putin nicknamed alpha male. And diplomats took great pleasure in describing Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi's Ukrainian nurse as a voluptuous blonde. Candid disclosures that could hurt relations.
This could shake governments, it could end programs, and it could seriously imperil U.S. foreign policy.
The files also reveal the U.S. is struggling with who to trust. Allies like Pakistan considered unreliable. Afghanistan's President Hamid Karzai described as driven by paranoia and under fire for corruption. And a cover-up of American involvement in missile strikes against al-Qaeda in Yemen. Last January, Yemen's president said to General Petraeus, "Okay, we'll continue saying the bombs are ours, not yours."
I think it's a very, very dangerous precedent.
The White House had been bracing itself for this, issuing a statement tonight condemning WikiLeaks for reckless and dangerous action. Sandy?
So, Joy, just how much of a nightmare is this for U.S. foreign policy?
Well, Sandy, this is a huge nightmare. I heard it described by one person as that feeling you get when you've been caught bad-mouthing your best friend. It's the ugly side of diplomacy. Everybody does it, but no one expects these secrets to go public. Now, I've heard that the fear is some allies may not trust the U.S. anymore. I've also heard some people speculate that renewal of the nuclear arms treaty with Russia could also be at risk.
And this is just the tip of the iceberg. More documents to come. So what's expected to come next?
Those words exactly from WikiLeaks. They said it's just the tip of the iceberg. There were only a few hundred cables posted on the site. These cables have multiple pages, and for the major publications looking at this information, they say there will be revelations to come all this week. In fact, The Guardian is even hinting that they have some tantalizing tidbit about the British royals. Sandy.
Okay, thanks, Joy. CTV's Joy Malbon in Washington.
They were as cheerful as could be, but Canadian government sources tell CTV News the private chatter by U.S. diplomats behind the scenes of the presidential visit may be WikiLeaked, exposing what the U.S. really thinks of its northern neighbor.
Having it in black and white and out of the mouths of Americans is rather an unusual thing.
Like the slow leak of a faucet, WikiLeaks is expected to release any Canadian references later this week. It's believed the top secret files were accessed by a disillusioned U.S. soldier, Bradley Manning. He then uploaded them all and gave it to WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange, an Australian anti-war activist.
What drives you? Defending victims. And I'm a combative person. So I like crushing bastards.
And to many online, the two are heroes. But others warn WikiLeaks has sparked a global diplomatic crisis that could threaten lives and global security.
When you make all this stuff public in the midst of ongoing negotiations, it certainly does a lot to undermine trust, which is really the basis for international negotiations.
The U.S. has since vowed to better secure its network in wake of the leaks, but some tech analysts worry it could easily happen here.
What we're not hearing from National Defense is how they would do things differently in Canada to avoid having exactly the same kind of data loss experienced in the U.S., which suggests to me very strongly that the same thing could happen in Canada.
The latest speculation is the thousands of U.S. diplomatic notes written in Canada will be released likely Thursday. The Foreign Affairs Minister calls WikiLeaks, quote, deplorable, adding it doesn't serve anyone's national interests. Sandy.
Thank you, Richard. CTV's Richard Madden in Ottawa.